Hello and welcome back to Friday Minis. Today, let's discuss an interesting phenomena when we have multiple devices that communicate with each other. Now, this is not how things are always done, but it's quite interesting to, see this in action. Here's the deal. The easiest way in which two devices can communicate with each other is by using two wires. Each device would have a transmission port and a receiving port, and as its name implies, the transmission port is where you'll be sending out signals meant for another device. The receive port is where the signals from another device comes in. Of course, in this context, the signals you are sending are generally electrical impulses, and what that means is usually we would alternate between two voltages. We'll call them high or low. Usually high is either 5 volts or 3.3 volts. Low can be a negative voltage or simply 0. So yeah, by doing this, you are transmitting one bit at a time, and the receiver will look at the pattern, that is being sent, and figure out data from there. Now, the interesting thing that I wanted to focus on for this episode is how you would actually connect these two devices together. Now, assuming that they are the same kind of device, what you would have to do is you would have to cross the cables. That makes sense, right? If I'm transmitting on this line, that needs to be connected to where you are receiving. Of course, the converse is true. I will receive on the line in which you are transmitting. Now, here's the deal. There is actually one particular kind of cable in which this has actually created some interesting issues and interesting workarounds, and that would be our humble Ethernet cable. Now, we use Wi-Fi a lot these days, but if you don't want to use Wi-Fi or for whatever reason you want better performance, you would use an Ethernet cable like this one. Right, it has a connector called a RJ45 connector, and as it turns out, the way you wire it is extremely interesting. In my earlier example, I qualified it by saying that the two devices have to be built the same. That's the only reason why you would cross the cables. But here's the deal. In the context of Ethernet connections, the devices are actually not built the same. Now, if you have a computer or any other kind of device that should act as a client, these have their ports designed in a certain way. Conversely, if you have another device like a router or a switch, something that's designed to serve up a connection, its construction is actually different. In fact, the difference lies in the fact that the transmit and receive pins have been reversed. What this means is if you're going to set up a fairly typical connection, usually between a computer and a router or a switch, you would use a straight cable. A direct connection from one end to the other is all you need. Because of the design, this whole swapping thing is already there, it's already present. You don't have to do anything special. Now, the only problem is Ethernet devices are pretty versatile. You don't necessarily have to connect, say, a switch to a computer. What you can do is you can connect computer to computer, or even in rarer cases, a switch to a switch. In those cases, because you are now looking at the same type of ports, you can no longer use a straight cable. That wouldn't make sense because you are connecting the two receive ports together and you're connecting the two transmit ports together. That doesn't work out. That is when you have to use a cable with a cross connection. So as you can imagine, it's no longer the same cable. You have to use a special cable that actually inverts these pins so that, the communication can actually go through properly. So yeah, that's an interesting phenomena that we don't get to think about a lot, right? With things like USB and all that, we don't really need to think about that at all. But that is in fact a consideration, and necessarily so. Now, one thing that has been done in modern day Ethernet ports is that they have some smarts built in, right? The network card or whatever device is smart enough to detect if it is, being connected the wrong way around, and it can actually programmatically swap the two pins around so that the right behavior will take place. That is of course the more advanced, the more fancy way of doing it. But yeah, back in the day before that was an option, we all had to rely on having the cable work correctly. That's all there is for this episode of Friday Minis. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've gained some insight today. But until next time, you're watching 0612 TV with NERDfirst.net. Thank you very much for watching. If you like my work and are feeling generous, you can shoot me a one-time donation on PayPal or sign up for a recurring one on Patreon. Of course, you can simply like, comment, and subscribe. You know the deal. For more videos, links to my channel and a related playlist are on screen. Thank you for your support.